Good morning and welcome to Valley Views. We're certainly glad to have each and every one of you watching us today. I want to also thank BTC Fiber for allowing us to have our program and supporting our program. So we're glad you're here. And we're also glad to have Pete Swafford. He's the superintendent of schools or director of schools of Sequatchie County Schools. And Pete, I know you've gone through a lot of changes over the past few months, and none of which you expected last August. And so we want to talk about some of those. And one of the first things I want to talk about, though, is your seniors. They've got graduation coming up, and when is that planned and scheduled, and are there any changes to the setting?
So the graduation, well, first of all, thank you for having me, Glenn. I appreciate what you do and getting information out to the citizens in the Valley. Graduation right now is set for July 24th at 6 o'clock. It's on Friday. We'd originally been scheduled for May the 15th, and we postponed it till the end of June, and then we've talked to our seniors, and the seniors wanted to have a graduation that was as close to a normal graduation as possible. So the senior class actually asked that it be moved till the end of July. They are anticipating having a quote-unquote normal graduation. What we're going to do, we've talked to the health department, and we would rely on the health department folks to tell us what we need to do. We fully anticipate that we will probably have to practice social distancing and some unusual guidelines for graduation, but we plan to have graduation at the football stadium with our students, our graduates on the football field, their families in the stands, and we will put into place whatever safeguards we have to. But we anticipate that we will have to limit the number of family members that come, and we will have to do some type of distancing on the field for our students. But we hope we can have a good graduation ceremony. We know we can, and not go by the old rules, but by the new norm.
Well, that's good. I was assuming that you're going to have a limit, probably family members, because of the social distancing and all that, and because I've been to those graduations and stands are always packed.
Yeah. Well, graduation now is 8 or 9 weeks away, so it would be difficult to decide today what those norms will be at the end of July, but we have talked to the health department, and we'll follow whatever guidelines the health department gives us.
Well, good. Well, at least they're having a graduation. That's a good point. I know I felt sorry, being a former teacher, I felt sorry for the students who lost a lot of things, a lot of normal school activities that were participated in, the sports. I know our baseball and softball teams had an opportunity to go back to the state again this year, had good teams, and but you have to kind of go with the flow sometimes.
Well, you do. You use the word we feel sorry for. We try to empathize and sympathize with the students for what they've gone through, because it's hard. You can't get your senior year back. So
No.
We talk about the seniors, and you talk about sports, but we've also tried to tell our staff and our students that you're well equipped to deal with whatever you need to deal with, and we've tried to make it so that we don't feel sorry for ourselves, but we understand that this is an opportunity for us to deal with and learn to deal with situations that come our way as we go through life.
Well, and I noticed changing pace a little bit, but your school, the food system, how you helped with so many of these children, because they depend on actually those lunches and breakfast from the schools.
They really do. We, we're playing by the rules that the agricultural department dealt us in the beginning, only being able to give out one meal at a time, but they gave some waivers which allowed us to serve 10 meals at a time. So on Thursdays, we've been giving out a package with 10 meals, 10 breakfast, 10 lunch in the bag, and we've been averaging 850 pickups on Thursdays, which translates into 8,500 meals.
Wow.
And so in a school system with 2,200 students, to be giving out 8,500 meals on Thursdays is pretty significant.
All right.
A lot going on here at the park today.
Yeah, certainly is. Well, I know that was a lot of hard work and preparation, because I know people would rather be at school and to serve those lunches.
Well, our food service folks have really stepped up and done a tremendous job. When I talk to people like you and in the community, people tell me, they give me credit and praise, so to speak, for feeding the students. And I did say early on that it would be a priority of ours that we would feed our students, but our food service employees and our teachers and our non-certified staff have really stepped up and done the job. The food service has been working every week pretty much since the middle of March to make sure this happens, and then we've had teachers and parapros step up and I'll use the word volunteer, but they've come in and help put the meals together, help give the meals out. So it's been a lot of our employees have stepped up and done what they know they need to do.
And that's always with my 30 years at school, it's always been the case that the teachers and the employees just step up. They've always done that.
They have, and by and large, folks go into education because they love kids and want to help kids, and this is no different.
Right, and now let's talk about a little bit about the teachers. They've had to adjust their instruction. I'm sure they'd much rather been in the classroom.
Yeah, well, about 3 or 4 years ago in our strategic plan, we put in place the technology piece that said that all of our teachers should be using Google Classroom to push out the lessons to their students. They can do it digitally. Some, of course, are better prepared than others. We actually had some teachers who, when we closed school on Sunday, March 15th, they were actually teaching using a digital platform on the 16th. But as I said, some are better prepared than others. Some weren't. Some weren't ready to do that immediately. Also, we've had the difficulty of our students having internet access at their home,
right.
And also having devices. So we actually gave out about 300 student computers to students that needed them. And you're here with BTC Fiber today, and BTC Fiber has put out hotspots in the community. They did one over at the Valley Fest site. They've done one here at Harris Park. They've done one on Cagle Mountain, and they did one on Lewis Chapel, so that students who don't have Wi-Fi or access to internet at their home can go to those hotspots and get on the internet.
Right, I thought that was really amazing, especially for BTC Fiber. I praise them, but simply not because they do our show, but because they offered that to the children, because they were truly concerned about the children of the community.
They were. We talked with them, and of course we had talked about this going forward in years gone by about doing it even though without having a pandemic, having hot spots at community centers in the future, and so this kind of pushed it a little forward to where it was going to be, but they had actually signed off on doing that before the COVID-19 situation ever came. They were committed to doing it. We were committed to doing it. But let me say this, even though we've pushed out digitally things that need to be pushed out, there's no substitute for a teacher in a classroom with a student and the feedback that the student gives the teacher and the feedback that the teacher gives the student. So, we're, I won't say pleased, but we understand going forward we've got to be more prepared for the digital classroom, but at the same time we know that there's no substitute for a teacher in a classroom doing what they do each day.
Well, I know when I taught a online class once before at Chattanooga State, and for me it wasn't the same because I really couldn't communicate what I really wanted to tell them through an email. It was hard to explain if they didn't understand what you were trying to tell them. It was kind of hard to explain.
It is, and and you were talking about Chattanooga State. And that was a situation where the students signed up to take an online course. We're in a situation now where no one signed up to take an online course. We got dealt the online courses in the middle of March.
Yeah, and that's something it was dropped on you. You had to do it. It wasn't something you planned. But when we look back at this, maybe I won't say it was a good thing, but maybe it brought to light some things, some shortages in there that we needed to be prepared for.
Well, anytime you have a situation like this, and I've never had a situation like this before, but anytime you have something that presents itself to you, then it shows you your strengths, and it also highlights your weaknesses. And going forward, we've got to be obviously more prepared for the virtual learning, but I don't think that anybody can prepare for a pandemic like we've had.
No.
and all the scenarios that will present themselves.
Well, I guess for the oncoming year, like you say, you're just going to kind of wing it and as as it comes along.
Well, I don't know if wing it's the right word, but it's like I spoke about graduation. We're not sure what the rules are going to be at the end of July, and we certainly don't know what the rules will be come the first week of August when we try to return to school. Right now we're basically, and this is an oversimplification, but we're basically preparing for 4 scenarios. Scenario 1 would be we're closed and we're not able to come on campus. Scenario 4 would be we're wide open and things are back to normal. But then there's 2 other scenarios kind of in between those. The second one is that we're partially open and we have to rotate students and limit the number on campus to a small number. And then the other would be a limitation, but on a larger scale. So we're trying to figure our way through that as everybody else, not only in the state of Tennessee, but really in the nation, as educators are trying to figure out how to offer the most that we can, but be as safe as we can, following the rules that are in place at this time.
Well, and I brought up sports earlier. We've got fall season coming up with all the fall sports, and with sports, with team sports, social distancing is almost an impossibility. So
it is, and right now we're today, which Tuesday, June the 2nd, we have just opened up our campus to groups of 10, working out in individual skills, no contact sports, are able to really participate in the way they would normally participate. So we today have actually started the opening up process of our athletics, our band, our cheerleaders, and those things, but it's certainly not to normal. They're basically doing conditioning by doing distancing. You spoke about baseball and softball. They both made it to the state last year. I have a special place in my heart for softball, and it's they had a really a golden opportunity this year. This year was a great opportunity for them to find out how far they could go, but it got taken away from them. I grew up in the South here, and I can't imagine having a fall without football.
Yeah.
But if something doesn't change, that's what we're looking at possibility-wise, and so we just have to be prepared for that eventuality.
Well, and if it went even in further, you're talking about basketball where everybody's enclosed even closer.
Yeah, so who knows what's going to happen. Certainly not medical folks, but you hear the experts say without a vaccine or a clear treatment that there are going to be limitations. So we just have to take the best advice that we can from those folks that know the medicine and those kind of things, and do what we have to do.
And what about the school board meetings? Have y'all had the virtual meetings this time?
Yes, we actually had a virtual meeting last night. So our last 2 monthly meetings have been virtual meetings along with our working sessions, which is unusual to do business that way. I think the board, along with everyone else, is anxious to get back to having a regular meeting in an open forum. So, but right now we are doing virtually. I think the state is doing virtual until the end of June, and then once we get to the end of June, we'll see what the rules are, and then we'll go from there.
Because I don't want to downplay the virus, because it's certainly a serious thing. But it seems like when you look at percentages, maybe it's not as bad, but it's still bad enough to where you don't want to catch it anyway.
Well, I mean, right now in the United States, over 100,000 people have died from complications, with COVID-19. And, Chattanooga is right now described as a hot spot. So I don't think we need to. I think we need to be mindful that this is very serious, and we need to treat it very seriously, and we need to, do what the health experts tell us.
Well, I know. I told someone the other day, I'm thankful that I live here in Dunlap, because maybe we haven't been hit as bad as many other places, but we still have had cases, but no deaths that I'm aware of.
Right. Well, I love living in the South, and also, I've always lived in a small town, and obviously the more density, the New York Cities, the Atlantas, the Nashvilles, they've got more cases per capita, but we're certainly not immune from it.
Right, and we just have to be careful. And the thing of it is, we when students are at home, we don't know what they're either exposed to or not exposed to, or how they practice the health. So when you come together, you have to be careful and mindful of those things, because you may be taking precautions, but someone else may not.
True, and if you watch this disease, it's an airborne disease, and it only takes one person to infect many, and it's a multiplicative multiplier kind of effect. So definitely have to be careful. And when school starts, those are the things that we'll have to be mindful of. And parents have to have confidence that they can send their child to school,
yes,
and it be a safe environment. And safety is and always will be primary focus. You've got to be safe before anything else can happen. And so a lot of that is, how confident are you in the safety of your child? And I have grandchildren in the system, and I think about it every day.
Well, and I know this back in May, my wife and I we took a trip to Gatlinburg, and a couple of places we went in to eat, they had their thermometers checking their temperature before we go in, and I thought, first of all, well, that's interesting, but then I understood why they was doing it, because you wouldn't want someone in there around food, especially, to be sick, and then cause especially workers. And I know you're concerned about everyone, your students, your faculty, your staff, and you've got a lot on your plate, a lot on your shoulders, a big responsibility. So I appreciate what you do, because I know you don't just sit in an office and twiddle your thumbs. I know you got a lot of things on your plate going on.
Yeah, it's this year has been very, very busy, and our staff has probably put in more time than folks realize. I had a lady one day ask me how I was enjoying my time off, and we've not really had any time off. Well, I mean, at weekends too, it's been nonstop. So, but we'll deal with what we've got to deal with, and we'll make the decisions we think are in the best interests of our students and our citizens.
Yeah, you mentioned the time off. I realize, like in your situation, being the head of the schools, I'm sure when you go home, your mind doesn't rest. It's not like, well, I'm off work now, I can go home. It doesn't work that way, does it?
Well, it doesn't work that way in general, but it certainly doesn't work that way now when you're trying to keep up with everything that's going on, educate yourself about this situation, and then make decisions that protect the safety of your students and your staff.
And a lot of weight on your shoulders.
There is, but everybody's got their own deal right now. Everybody's got a situation they're having to deal with. We've got lots of our citizens who are out of work, and they're worried about feeding their family and paying their bills, and so there's a lot on a lot of people's shoulders, not just mine. So, but I think that we as a community will be stronger and we'll be closer when it's over than we've ever been, and so it's certainly not about any one individual. It's about all of us doing all that we can to take care of the situation that we're in. And I feel for these families who, like I say, have been out of work, and
Yes.
they're struggling. I grew up, my mom was a beautician, and so I certainly sympathize with those folks who weren't able to work for 2 months and make a living as beauticians. It hits pretty close to our home when you start talking about those things. So,
Right.
I get it, and I wish the best for all of our citizens, and I hope that they can get back on their feet very soon.
Well, you mentioned that, and I've noticed that our community has really come together for everybody and worked hard together. I know the chamber has, and the city and the county have come together and helping. That's just kind of the way this community is. It helps everybody.
Yeah, Sequatchie County is a very giving community, and they take care of their own. And you've seen it, and as I just said a moment ago, I believe that Sequatchie County will be closer as a community when it's all over. And I know we're going to get through this the best we can, and then when we get to the other side, we'll be better than we were before.
Pete, it's about time for us to close, and I certainly want to thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Glenn.
Appreciate your comments, and wish you well this school year. I always get excited when school starts, and it's just the 30 years in me.
I understand, and we're going to, try to do our best as we go forward, as we always do. But thank you.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Thanks.